We are now joined by UFC president and I guess soon to be prime minister of Fight Island, Dana White. Dana, you've had a couple events in Florida and they were great successes. UFC 249 was a hell of a card. Now you move back to your backyard at the Apex. The Nevada State Athletic Commission has signed off on things. We're a go. What were your takeaways that you gathered from these first two events in Florida that you put on in really unprecedented circumstances?
Yeah, I mean, I always knew that we could. I knew that we would be first, and I knew when we went first, we would be the ones that would open everything up. Health and safety is something that we worry about every weekend, way before the coronavirus ever started. So one of the things that we also do is we solve problems. We're very good at solving problems over here, and I think we're the best at it. I think we're the best when problems pop up, whether a fight falls out. You know, there's different types of medical concerns or whatever it might be. We're the best at handling all that. So Florida was willing to work with us. They were great, from the governor to the mayor of Jacksonville to the athletic commission. And they worked well with us, and we got it figured out. And I think the fact that, not that we couldn't have got that done in Nevada. I mean, Nevada has a great athletic commission too. And it was just, you know, they were willing to do it. Nevada wasn't. So it's good to be home. And I think the production value that you're going to get from the Apex is going to be much better. And we'll get a couple under our belt here in Nevada and make these guys comfortable with sports being back here in Las Vegas.
And you get a heck of a main event too in this first card back in Nevada. Tyron Woodley, former champ, against a guy, Gilbert Burns, who was just caught fire since he went back up to 170 pounds. I know there's a lot going on at welterweight, but what is the likelihood that this is something of a title eliminator at 170?
Yeah, it's a big deal. Listen, the 170-pound division is super exciting right now. You look at, we got, I'm actually in the war room right now. So Usman's the champ. You got Woodley at number 1, Colby Covington, Jorge Masvidal, then Leon Edwards. And it's actually cool that we're getting Gilbert Burns into the mix right now too, because this kid's been on fire at 170. So it's a fun fight. It's an incredible main event, and I'm really excited for it.
I was at Radio Row when everything went down with Kamaru Usman, Jorge Masvidal, and in the moment you thought, okay, that is it. That is the next title fight at 170. Now in the most recent days, you have Usman and even his manager saying, well, maybe Conor McGregor would be the guy we want to fight next. From a promotional standpoint, how does Usman v. McGregor compare to Usman v. Masvidal?
Listen, the next title fight for Usman is going to be one of these guys. It's going to be Colby, Masvidal, Edwards. It's going to be one of those guys. It's not going to be Conor McGregor.
Well, I mean, and in fairness to Usman, that was sparked by, again, what he says and what he means may be different things, but Masvidal seems keen on looking toward a BMF title defense, facing Nate Diaz again. What is your appetite to see the BMF title defense, see that fight run back?
I would rather see the UFC title be defended than the BMF title. Anything's possible, but those are the fights that make sense right now.
And that whole BMF thing, that was birthed out of fan interest. They clamor, you guys respond and put on a great event. The Rock comes out. We're seeing a similar appetite now with John Jones v. Francis Ngannou. I know there are a lot of things that you need to consider there, but just as a fan, what is your appetite to see that fight at some point?
Yeah, listen, I'm down for any kind of fight that's fun. If there's a big enough fight and the fans want to see it and it's really what people want. But let me just say this. To all the fans out there, remember this when you hear this. What you hear on Twitter going back and forth or in the public isn't always necessarily what's going on behind the scenes. If there's you've seen it many times in the past, if there's a big enough fight to be made and people want to see it and the fighters really want that fight, the fight gets made. Don't believe everything you hear up front. It's not always necessarily the case behind the scenes.
All right, so if you would, maybe pan your camera over to John Jones's name then. In the war room, in that nucleus and that whiteboard, what are the names next to his that we're considering for his next, I guess, title defense, or if he is to move up to heavyweight?
Jones isn't on the board right now. Jones isn't on the board. But in that division right now, you got Dominic Reyes, who looked unbelievable in that last fight, and you got Jan Blachowicz. Those are the fights that make sense right now.
Well, Dana, as we look going into the future, one of the storylines to come out of the UFC that made mainstream waves was Fight Island. So I know you've been asked about this ad nauseum, but it is such an interesting and unique concept. I'd be remiss if I didn't ask, how close are we to UFC Fight Island 1 happening?
Yeah, I'll probably announce something next week. What I want is the infrastructure is being built there. And when I announce Fight Island, where it is and when our first fight will be there, I actually want pictures and photos of the infrastructure that we've built. And so I'll announce all that at the same time. But next week, I should have a lot of stuff done. So hopefully next week or the week after, I can give you guys a little more. But mid-June, this thing should be done. I will be out there for probably a month. I'll probably be out there for the month of July. I'll go there in the end of June, go home the end of July, and I'll be there for all of those fights.
And earlier this week, in fact, just a matter of days ago, the UFC filed for trademarks for UFC SEA, play on words, double entendre there. What prompted that decision?
That's the guy. What's his name? The guy
Oliver.
that came out and said, John Oliver, came out and did that piece with some selective facts, about what we had done in Florida and all that stuff and UFC. So I told my lawyers after that, I said, see if the trademarks are there for UFC. So obviously they did, and obviously you guys know about it. Did we get them? Yeah, I think we got it. Thanks, John Oliver. I'm not giving you a cut either.
Well, a fight that we anticipate to see on Fight Island is one that was scheduled for San Diego, Dan Hooker against Dustin Poirier. It's probably the deepest division in the sport. When you look at this, how close is that fight to being signed, Hooker-Poirier, for the reported date of June 27th?
Hey, how close are we to Hooker-Poirier? Close. Visa issues. We're very close. So, fight's looking good.
All right, I'm going to rip through his CKB teammates. Alex Volkanovski, a guy who's recovering from a hand injury, seems finally fit and ready to go. Henry Cejudo has said he would come out of retirement to try to go from Triple C to C4. As you survey the options at 145 for Alex, I know Cejudo isn't necessarily on the board, but if he were, how would that compare to what's out there?
No, that's one of those things that I always talk about. If you look at history, the last 20 years, I always say, and Cejudo's been talking about retiring for a while. When a guy starts talking about retirement, you should retire. And I love Henry Cejudo. He's had a great run here. And if his head was really into it and he was down to, dive in and fight anybody, and I'd be all about it. When you start talking about retiring, you need to retire. So I don't even consider Henry Cejudo for any fights, period. He's retired. If you start talking about Volkanovski, we're talking about Max Holloway, Ortega and the Korean Zombie are going to fight. You know how I just went out and said for the Ferguson fight against Gaethje, I said, I absolutely, positively guarantee you that this fight will be great. That's the same thing with Brian Ortega versus the Korean Zombie. There's no way that fight is boring, and the guy that comes out of that fight would be next in line for a title shot. But right now, we've been talking about the rematch with Volkanovski and Holloway.
Wow, that would be a fun fight. Alex looked fantastic against Holloway. Dana, last question from me. Zhang Weili, a star fighter in the making. She looked tremendous in a very tough fight against Joanna Jędrzejczyk at that same card. What does it mean to the promotion to have a rising star out of mainland China?
Yeah, no, it's a big deal for us. We've been working on the Chinese market for a long time, and here she comes, and she's awesome. I love her personality. I love her fighting style. I love her commitment to being the best, and I love the way she fights. So we literally couldn't have found a more perfect champion than her for the first time in China. And we're working on some stuff right now that hopefully I can get done by the end of today, and I'll make an announcement very soon about her and what's going on.
All right. Our ears and eyes are open for that. Dana White, thank you so much for the time, my friend. Stay well.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.